It all started on a sunny spring afternoon when the cry of a newborn baby echoed through the corridors of Santa Clara Hospital in the city of São Paulo. Beatriz, a young mother of 28, held her newborn daughter Luisa in her arms, tears of joy streaming down her face. Next to her, Ricardo, her husband, smiled proudly, hardly able to believe the perfection of that little being who was now part of their lives. "She's beautiful, Bea," said Ricardo, gently stroking his daughter's head. "So small, so fragile, I can't wait to see her grow up." Beatriz smiled, exhausted but radiant. "She's perfect, Ricardo. Our little Luisa." The couple could hardly imagine that those moments of pure happiness would be the last they would have with their daughter for many years. 3 days later, as they were preparing to leave the hospital, the unthinkable happened. A woman dressed as a nurse entered the room, claiming she needed to take the baby for some routine tests. Beatriz, still recovering from childbirth, didn't suspect a thing. It wasn't until half an hour later, when the real nurse arrived for discharge, that panic set in. Luisa had disappeared. The days that followed were a blur of despair, frantic searches and shattered hopes. The police were called. Posters were put up all over the city. Television reports appealed for information, but Luisa seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, little Luisa was taken far away to an uncertain and dark fate. The woman who kidnapped her, driven by an obsessive desire to have a child, soon realized that she wouldn't be able to look after the baby properly. In an act of desperation and remorse, she abandoned Luisa in front of an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, leaving only a small gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant next to the baby. Years passed, and Luisa grew up on the streets of São Paulo. The orphanage, overburdened and underfunded, was unable to keep her for long. By the age of 6, she was wandering the streets, surviving on petty theft and the occasional charity from strangers. The necklace, her only connection to an unknown past, became her most precious possession. Luisa learned the hard lessons of life on the streets early on. Her eyes, once bright and innocent, took on a premature hardness. Her small, thin body bore scars, both physical and emotional, from a life of deprivation and constant danger. But despite everything, a flame of hope continued to burn in her heart. Every night before falling asleep in whatever corner she could call a temporary shelter, Luisa would hold the necklace against her chest and whisper a prayer. "Please take me home. Wherever it is, please take me home." Meanwhile, Beatriz and Ricardo never gave up on finding their lost daughter. The years passed, leaving deep scars on their faces and in their souls. But hope, however fragile, persisted. They kept Luisa's room intact, like a sanctuary of memories and unfulfilled dreams. "Sometimes I wonder if we're just torturing ourselves," said Beatriz one night, sitting on the bed that should have been Luisa's, holding a teddy bear that had never been hugged. "Maybe we should accept that she's gone." Ricardo knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "No, Bea, we can't give up. She's out there somewhere. And one day we'll find her, I promise." It was on an autumn afternoon, almost 12 years after Luisa's disappearance, that fate finally intervened. Beatriz was at the mall, doing some routine shopping, when her eyes caught a glimpse of something familiar. A ragged little girl, no more than 12 years old, was walking furtively among the people, her watchful eyes looking for an opportunity to steal something to eat. But it wasn't the girl's appearance that caught Beatriz's attention. It was the necklace. A small gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant, identical to the one she had put around the neck of her newborn daughter so many years ago. Beatriz's heart raced. Her hands began to shake. Could it be? After all these years? She slowly approached the girl, fearing that she might run away at any moment. "Hello," Beatriz said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "That's a very beautiful necklace you have." Luisa, taken by surprise, instinctively grabbed the necklace. Her eyes, suspicious and frightened, examined Beatriz. "It's mine," she said defensively. "It's always been mine." Beatriz felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I know, darling, I know it's yours." Do you remember where you got it?" Luisa hesitated, confused by the kindness in the woman's voice. "No, not really. I've always had it. It's the only thing I have." At that moment, Beatriz knew. With a certainty that came from the depths of her being, she knew she was standing in front of her lost daughter. "Luisa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The girl took a step back, alarmed. "How do you know my name?" Beatrice couldn't hold back her tears. "Oh my God, it's you, it really is you." Before Luisa could react, Beatrice wrapped her in a tight embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. Luisa, confused and frightened, remained rigid in the stranger's arms. "Please," said Luisa, her voice trembling. "You're scaring me. Who are you?" Beatrice pulled away, gently holding Luisa's shoulders. "My name is Beatrice, and I'm your mother, Luisa, your real mother." Luisa's world seemed to spin. Mother? She had a mother? How was that possible? So many conflicting emotions flooded her that she could hardly breathe. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, that can't be true. I don't have a family. I've always been alone." Beatrice, sensing the panic in her daughter's eyes, tried to calm her down. "I know this is hard to believe, darling, but it's true. You were taken from us when you were just a baby. We never stopped looking for you." Luisa looked around frantically, searching for an escape route. It was all too much. It had to be some kind of trick, some kind of trap. No one had ever cared about her before. Why should it be any different now? I have to go," she stammered, taking a step back. Beatrice, fearful of losing her daughter again, acted on instinct. She picked up her phone and quickly dialed a number. "Ricardo," she said when the call was answered, her voice shaking with emotion. "Come to the mall now, I've found her. I found our Luisa." While they waited for Ricardo to arrive, Beatrice tried to calm Luisa down, telling her about her birth, about the necklace, about how she had disappeared. Luisa listened with a mixture of disbelief and a deep longing that she barely understood. When Ricardo arrived, breathless and wide-eyed with hope, the scene that followed was one of pure emotion. He looked at Luisa, immediately recognizing the features of Beatrice and himself in the girl's face. "My child," he whispered, falling to his knees in front of her. "We've finally found you." Luisa, overwhelmed by everything, began to cry. Years of loneliness, fear, and despair came to the surface in an explosion of emotions. Beatrice and Ricardo embraced her, forming a circle of love around her, silently promising never to let her go again. In the days that followed, Luisa's life changed completely. She was taken to Beatrice and Ricardo's home, a spacious and comfortable house in the suburbs of São Paulo. The room that had been prepared for her so many years ago finally welcomed its occupant. But the transition wasn't easy. Luisa, used to the harshness of the streets, found it difficult to adapt to her new reality. She would wake up in the middle of the night, frightened, believing that everything was just a dream. Sometimes the comfort of her bed was too much, and she would curl up on the floor, seeking the familiarity of the life she knew. Beatrice and Ricardo, for their part, had to learn to be parents to a traumatized preteen. They hired therapists, doctors, and tutors to help Luisa recover physically and emotionally. Every little bit of progress was celebrated, every setback met with patience and love. "I don't know if I can do this," Luisa confessed one night, hugging her knees to her chest. "What if I'm not good enough to be your daughter?" Beatrice sat next to her on the bed, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, my love, you're already perfect just the way you are. We love you unconditionally. There's nothing you can do to change that." Ricardo joined them, taking a seat on the other side of Luisa. "Your mother is right, Princess. We've waited for you for so long. Now that we've found you, nothing else matters but having you with us." Slowly, day by day, Luisa began to open up. She learned to trust her parents, to accept their love and care. She started going to school, making friends, experiencing the simple joys of childhood that had been denied her for so long. But it wasn't all flowers. The family faced legal challenges to make custody of Luisa official. The case of her kidnapping was reopened, bringing up painful memories and attracting media attention. Luisa found herself at the center of a storm she barely understood. "Why does everyone want to know about me?" she asked one day, hiding behind the curtains as reporters crowded outside the house. Ricardo sighed, pulling her into a hug. "Because your story is extraordinary, my love. You're a survivor, a warrior. People are inspired by you." Luisa frowned. "But I don't feel like a warrior. Sometimes I just feel lost." Beatrice joined in the hug. "And it's okay to feel that way, darling. You've been through so much, but now you have us, and together we'll find the way." As the months passed, Louisa began to blossom. Her body, once frail and malnourished, gained strength and health. Her eyes, once cautious and suspicious, began to shine with a renewed light. She discovered talents she didn't even know she possessed, a melodious voice that enchanted everyone when she sang, a natural ability to draw that turned blank pages into fantastic worlds. One day, while drawing in the garden, Louisa called Beatrice. "Mamai," she said, the word still sounding new on her lips. "Look what I've done." Beatrice approached, her heart filling with joy at hearing Louisa call her mother. She looked at the drawing and felt tears welling up in her eyes. It was a family portrait, Beatrice, Ricardo and Louisa all smiling, holding hands. "It's beautiful, my love," Beatrice whispered, hugging her daughter. Louisa smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face. "It's us, our family." It was at that moment that Beatrice realized how far they had come. Louisa was no longer the frightened little girl they had met at the mall. She was becoming a strong, courageous and loving young woman, but Louisa's healing journey was far from over. There were days when the ghosts of her past haunted her, nights when nightmares woke her up screaming. On one of these particularly difficult nights, Ricardo found her curled up in the corner of her room, shivering. "Hey, princess," he said softly, sitting down next to her. "Do you want to talk about it?" Louisa shook her head, silent tears running down her cheeks. Ricardo didn't insist. Instead, he began to softly sing a lullaby he used to sing to her when she was a baby. Slowly, Louisa calmed down, letting herself be lulled by her father's voice. "You know," Ricardo said when he had finished the song, "when you were a baby, I used to sing this to you every night. Even after you disappeared, I kept singing it. It was my way of keeping you close." Louisa looked at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and love. "You never gave up on me, did you?" Ricardo smiled, tears in his own eyes. "Never, and we'll never give up. You're our daughter, Louisa, and nothing can change that." That night, for the first time since arriving at her parents' house, Louisa allowed herself to be truly vulnerable. She cried in Ricardo's arms, releasing years of pain and loneliness. And when the sun rose, something had changed. A new trust, a new connection had formed between father and daughter. Months turned into years, and Louisa continued to grow and change. She entered adolescence with the unwavering support of her parents, facing the typical challenges of this stage of life with a maturity beyond her years. One day over dinner, Louisa surprised her parents with an unexpected question. "Do you think we'll ever find out who kidnapped me?" Beatrice and Ricardo exchanged worried glances. It was a subject they had avoided for fear of reopening old wounds. "We don't know, dear," Beatrice answered honestly. "The police have never been able to find any concrete clues. But why do you ask? Has it been bothering you?" Louisa played with the food on her plate thoughtfully. "Sometimes I wonder why. Why would anyone do that? And what happened after I was abandoned? There are so many parts of my story that are blank." Ricardo reached across the table and took Louisa's hand. "We understand your curiosity, princess, and if one day we get the chance to find out those answers, we'll support you. But I want you to know that these blank spots don't define who you are. Your story began long before that day in the hospital and will continue far beyond it." Louisa smiled, squeezing her father's hand. "I know, it's just sometimes I feel like I have two lives, the one before you found me and the one now." Beatrice stood up and walked over to Louisa, hugging her from behind. "And both lives are part of who you are, my love. The brave girl who survived on the streets and the incredible young woman you are becoming. We love every part of you." That conversation opened doors to many others. Louisa began to share more about her experiences on the streets, the painful memories, but also the moments of kindness and hope she had experienced. Beatrice and Ricardo listened with heavy hearts, but also with a deep sense of admiration for their daughter's resilience. As Louisa approached the end of high school, she began to think seriously about her future. Her experiences had awakened in her a strong desire to help other children in vulnerable situations. "I want to study social work," she announced one day over breakfast. "I want to make a difference in the lives of children like I was." Beatrice and Ricardo couldn't be prouder. They saw how their daughter had turned her pain into purpose, her tragedy into triumph. "We will support you in whatever path you choose, my love," said Beatrice, her eyes shining with pride. Ricardo agreed, adding with a smile, "But don't be surprised if I show up on campus occasionally to check that you're eating properly." Luisa laughed, rolling her eyes playfully. "Dad, I survived on the streets for years. I think I can handle college cafeteria food." The family laughed together, a sound that had become commonplace in their home, but never ceased to be precious. When the day came for Luisa's graduation, the emotion was palpable. She was radiant in her gown, her face glowing with a mixture of pride and anticipation for the future. Before the ceremony, Beatrice found her alone in her room fixing her cap. "I have something for you," said Beatrice, handing Luisa a small box. Luisa opened the box and gasped. Inside was a new necklace, similar to the one she had always worn, but this one had 3 hearts intertwined. "The middle heart," explained Beatrice, "is your original necklace. The other 2 represent your father and me. No matter where life takes you, Luisa, we will always be connected." Tears welled up in Luisa's eyes as she hugged her mother. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for never giving up on me, for loving me unconditionally, for giving me a home." Beatrice held Luisa's face between her hands. "Oh, my love, you've given us so much more than we could ever have dreamed of. You taught us the true meaning of strength, of forgiveness, of love." At that moment, Ricardo entered the room. "Hey, are my favorite girls ready? We have a graduation to go to." Luisa smiled, putting on her new necklace. She looked at her parents, feeling a wave of gratitude and love so intense that she could hardly breathe. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's do it." As they walked together to the car, Luisa reflected on her journey. From the dark, cold alleys of São Paulo to this moment of triumph, she had come a long way. And although the path hadn't always been easy, every step had led her to this moment, to this family, to this love. When Luisa took to the stage to receive her diploma, she saw her parents in the audience, their faces glowing with pride and love. And at that moment, she knew with absolute certainty she was home. No matter what the future held, she would face it with courage, knowing that she had the unconditional love of her family to support her. And so, Luisa turned over a new leaf in her life, ready to write the next chapters of her story. If you've watched this far, it's because you're enjoying the story, so please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting on where you watch this video from. Getting back to the story. The college years brought new challenges and opportunities for Luisa. She excelled in her studies, applying her unique life experience to better understand the complexities of the social welfare system. Her professors often praised her unique perspective and genuine empathy for the disadvantaged. During her second year, Luisa began interning at a shelter for homeless children. It was an emotionally intense experience that brought back many of her own memories. But instead of letting it get her down, she channeled these emotions into her work, determined to make a difference. One afternoon, while working at the shelter, Luisa met Maria, a 10-year-old girl with suspicious eyes and a defensive attitude that was painfully familiar to her. "Hi, Maria," Luisa said softly, taking a seat next to the girl. "How are you today?" Maria shrugged, avoiding Luisa's gaze. "Whatever. It's not like anyone really cares." Luisa felt her heart squeeze. How many times had she said those same words herself? "You know, Maria," she began, "I used to think exactly like you." This captured Maria's attention. "You?" she asked, looking at Luisa skeptically. "But you seem so normal." Luisa laughed softly. "Well, I wasn't always like this. I spent years living on the streets just like you. I didn't think anyone in the world cared about me." Maria's eyes widened. "Really? And what happened?" "I found out I was wrong," Luisa replied with a gentle smile. "There were people who cared. I just didn't know it yet. And you know what? I care about you, Maria, and I'm here to help you if you let me." At that moment, something changed in Maria's eyes. A tiny spark of hope ignited, and Luisa knew she had found her true calling. In the months that followed, Luisa worked tirelessly with Maria and the other children at the shelter. She organized group therapy sessions, tutoring and recreational activities. But most importantly, She offered these children something she herself had craved for so long: unconditional understanding and acceptance. At home, Beatrice and Ricardo watched their daughter grow with pride. They saw how Luisa's difficult experiences had turned into a driving force for good. "You're doing an incredible job, Princessa," Ricardo said one evening after Luisa had shared some stories about her day at the shelter. Luisa smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "Thanks, Dad, but sometimes it's hard seeing these children go through what I went through. It hurts." Beatrice approached, wrapping Luisa in a tight hug. "Oh, my love, of course it hurts. But it's that pain that makes you so special in this job. You understand these children in a way that few others can." Luisa nodded, tears in her eyes. "I just wish I could do more. I wish I could save them all." Ricardo joined in the hug. "You can't save everyone, Princess, but every life you touch, every child you help find hope, but that's a miracle. Never forget that." Her parents' words echoed in Luisa's mind in the years that followed. She graduated with honors and immediately began working full-time at the shelter. Her work caught the attention of social workers and psychologists across the country, who were impressed by her innovative approaches and her ability to connect with the most difficult children. One day, Luisa received an unexpected call. It was the director of a major social research institute, inviting her to lead a pioneering project focused on reintegrating street children into society. "Your work is revolutionary, Ms. Luisa," said the director. "We believe that your personal experience combined with your academic background could bring a unique and valuable perspective to this project." Luisa was speechless. It was an incredible opportunity, a chance to expand her impact beyond the local shelter, but it also meant leaving behind the work she loved, the children with whom she had created such strong bonds. That evening, she shared the news with her parents, seeking advice. "It's a difficult decision," she admitted. "On the one hand, it's a chance to make a difference on a national scale. On the other, I feel like I'd be abandoning the children here." Beatrice took Luisa's hand. "My love, you would never abandon these children. The work you've done here, the impact you've had, that will never disappear. And think of how many more children you could help with this new project." Ricardo agreed. "Your mother is right, Princess. Sometimes in order to do the most good, we need to take a step beyond our comfort zone. But no matter what you decide, we will support you 100%. Luisa reflected deeply on her decision over the following weeks. She talked to her colleagues at the shelter, to the children she had helped over the years, and even to Maria, who was now a teenager about to be adopted by a loving family. "You should go," Maria told her during their last conversation. "You showed me that it's possible to have hope, Luisa. Now you can show it to many more people." With tears in her eyes, Luisa hugged Maria. "Thank you," she whispered, "for reminding me why I do this." And so, with a heavy heart but full of hope, Luisa accepted the new challenge. In the years that followed, she worked tirelessly, traveling the country, sharing her story and her knowledge. She helped develop new assistance programs, trained social workers, and influenced public policy. Her work did not go unnoticed. At the age of 35, Luisa was invited to give a speech at the UN on the rights of children in vulnerable situations. As she stepped up to the podium, she saw her parents in the audience, their faces glowing with pride. She touched the necklace around her neck, the 3 intertwined hearts reminding her of where she came from and of all the love that had brought her there. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice strong and clear, "I am here today not just as a social welfare specialist, but as someone who has lived on the streets, who has known despair and loneliness. I'm here to tell you that every child deserves a home, deserves love, deserves a chance. And with the right effort, we can make that happen." As Luisa spoke, her story touched hearts around the world. She spoke about her own journey, about the children she had helped over the years, about the importance of never giving up hope. "Every child is a miracle," she concluded, tears shining in her eyes. "Each life is precious, and when we offer love and support, when we show these children that they matter, we don't just change their lives, we change the world." The audience erupted in applause, many with tears in their eyes. Luisa looked at her parents, who were smiling with indescribable pride. At that moment, she felt the weight of her journey, from scared little girl on the streets of São Paulo to confident woman on the UN podium. After her speech, Luisa was approached by dignitaries and world leaders, all eager to discuss her ideas and experiences. But amidst all the buzz, her eyes sought out her parents. When she found them, she ran into their arms, feeling once again like the little girl who had found her home so many years ago. "We're so proud of you, my love," Beatrice whispered, holding Luisa's face between her hands. Ricardo, with tears in his eyes, added, "You've exceeded all our expectations, Princess. You're changing the world." Luisa smiled through her tears. "I'm just giving back the love you've given me. All of this is thanks to you." In the days following the UN conference, Luisa's life changed dramatically. Her story went viral, inspiring millions around the world. She received invitations to give talks, book deals, and even proposals to adapt her story into a movie. In the midst of all this excitement, Luisa received an unexpected phone call. It was Maria, the girl she had helped years ago at the shelter. "Luisa," Maria said, her voice laced with emotion, "I saw your speech on TV. I wanted you to know that you changed my life. I'm at university now, studying social work. I want to be like you." Luisa felt her heart fill with joy. "Oh, Maria, you don't know how much this means to me. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," Maria replied, "for never giving up on me, for showing me that I could be more than my past." After hanging up the phone, Luisa reflected on how a simple act of kindness could create ripples of change that extended far beyond what we could see. As her career took off, Luisa never lost sight of her original mission. She used her newly acquired platform to amplify the voices of children in vulnerable situations, pushing for reforms in the social welfare system and raising funds for support programs. One day, during a visit to a shelter in a small town, Luisa met a boy called João. He was 10 years old and had eyes that carried a sadness she knew all too well. "Hi, João," she said softly, sitting down next to him. "How are you feeling today?" João shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Nobody really cares." Luisa smiled gently. "I do care, João. And I want you to know that, no matter how difficult things seem right now, there is hope. I know that because I've been where you are." João's eyes widened with surprise. "You? But you look so happy." "I am now," Luisa replied. "But there was a time when I was as scared and alone as you are now. Do you know what helped me? People who cared. People who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." John looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. What if no one believes in me?" Luisa put her hand on his shoulder. "I believe you, João. And I promise I'll do everything I can to help you find people who believe in you too." At that moment, something changed in João's eyes. A small spark of hope ignited, just as it had with Luisa so many years ago. In the months that followed, Luisa worked tirelessly to improve João's situation and that of other children like him. She used her influence to push for changes in local policies, raised funds to improve conditions at the shelter, and implemented mentoring programs to help the children build a better future. A year later, Luisa received an email that made her cry with joy. It was from João. He had been adopted by a loving family and was adapting well to his new life. "Thank you for believing in me," he wrote. "You changed my life." Reading those words, Luisa felt a wave of gratitude for everyone who had believed in her throughout her journey. Her parents, the social workers who helped her, the people who saw beyond her past and saw her potential. That evening, Luisa called her parents. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for finding me, for never giving up on me, for loving me unconditionally." "Oh dear," Beatrice replied, her voice breaking. "We're the ones to thank. You taught us the true meaning of love, perseverance, and hope." Ricardo added, "You're our hero, Princess. Not just ours, but for so many children around the world." Luisa smiled through her tears. "I love you so much. Everything I am, everything I've achieved, is thanks to you." As she hung up the phone, Luisa looked at the photo on her desk, her with her parents on the day of her graduation. Next to it was a new photo of her with João and his adoptive family, all smiling brightly. At that moment, Louisa understood that her story wasn't just about personal overcoming. It was about the transformative power of love, family, and hope. It was about how one life touched by love could, in turn, touch countless other lives. She picked up a pen and began to write. Perhaps it was time to share her story with the world in a new way. A book, she thought, not just about her journey, but about all the children she had met along the way. A book to inspire hope, to show that no matter how dark the night may seem, the dawn always comes. And so Louisa began to write the next chapter of her life, knowing that each word would be a tribute to everyone who believed in her, and a promise to all the children who still needed to believe in themselves. As the words flowed, Louisa felt a deep sense of purpose. Her life, with all its pains and joys, had a greater meaning. She had become a beacon of hope for those who were still lost in the darkness. Months passed and Louisa's book was finally ready. Entitled Intertwined Hearts, A Journey of Loss, Love and Redemption, the book quickly became an international bestseller. Her words have touched hearts around the world, inspiring changes in social welfare policies and motivating thousands of people to become foster parents or volunteer in shelters. At the book launch, Louisa looked out at the gathered crowd. There were her parents, of course, their faces beaming with pride. But there were also faces she hadn't expected to see. Maria, now a young social worker, João with his foster family, and dozens of other children and young people whose lives she had touched over the years. With tears in her eyes, Louisa began her speech. When I was a little girl on the streets of São Paulo, I used to look up at the stars and wonder if anyone out there cared about me. Today, I look at all of you and see a whole universe of love and compassion. My story is not just mine, it's ours. It's the story of every child who has ever felt lost, of every parent who has never given up looking, of every person who has reached out to help someone in need. She paused, her voice laced with emotion. This book is a promise to every child out there who is still waiting to be found. You matter, you are loved, and there is a place for you in this world. When she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Louisa came down from the stage and was immediately enveloped in a warm hug from her parents. We're so proud of you, my love, Beatriz whispered. Ricardo added, his voice breaking. You've exceeded all our expectations, princess. Louisa smiled through her tears. I'm just giving back the love you've given me. All of this is thanks to you. That night, as Louisa prepared for bed, she picked up the necklace her parents had given her at her graduation. The 3 intertwined hearts. She held it against her chest, feeling the weight of her journey, the joy of her present, and the hope for the future.